Kia ora, I'm Carly Kidd and I'm lucky enough to teach an awesome bunch of Year 5 and 6 students at the Garden School in Manurewa. I have been teaching for 15 years and have taught in 4 different schools from DCL7 to 10. Last year I taught a blended e-learning Year 3-4 class. This is my first year at the Garden School and my first time teaching a one-to-one iPad e-learning class. In this assignment I will attempt to identify and briefly justify the need to implement a digital and collaborative learning innovation applied to a specific area of my practice. Along with the readings and videos from our course, I have spent a lot of time reflecting on my teaching practice, clarifying terminology and asking my students questions in person and via Google Form surveys about learning in our classroom. It quickly became apparent that the issue was learner agency. My students had some interesting things to say. Here are the responses to 2 of the student agency questions from the Google Form survey my students completed. Another question was, how do you know what your next steps for learning are? Let's have a look at a quick summary of the questions. 20 out of the 25 students believe that I have full control of their learning. 11 students feel that I solely make the decisions about what they learn, and more than half my class have no idea how to identify their next steps for learning. Reflecting on student engagement in my classroom, I have noticed that although they all have devices and most seem engaged, the actual completion of tasks and on-task behaviour is still an area that I constantly need to monitor. Observing my students working and discussing learning with them tells me that they do their work because they have to, because the teacher says. So what do the experts say? John Hattie observes that significantly high effects on learning are found when A. they can set challenging and specific goals that allow them to direct, evaluate and redirect their learning, and B. receive feedback from peers, teachers, parents and own experiences that relate specifically to how the gap can be addressed between current and future performance. In the best evidence synthesis, it says, sustained higher achievement is possible when teachers use pedagogical approaches that enable students to take charge of their own learning. Such approaches do not leave the students to discover in an unstructured environment, rather they are highly structured in supporting student agency and sustained and thoughtful engagement. Our curriculum has statements such as opportunities to involve students directly in decisions related to their own learning. This encourages them to see what they are doing as relevant and to take greater ownership of their learning. Students at the centre of teaching and learning. Encourages all students to reflect on their own learning process and to learn how to learn. After viewing TED Talks and doing readings and watching numerous videos, I am certain that learner agency is the area of my practice that needs development. So if my students don't feel they have any control, then they won't be feeling empowered, which begins to explain why they aren't engaged in their learning. All the research identifies learner agency as very important for high levels of achievement, which is what I want for my students. Now to identify the best tool to improve learner agency and innovate my teaching practice. Thanks for watching.
Created using Powtoon.